Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I hope you all are enjoying MAXDAYS and doing well and learning from each other as a vibrant community. I am Sinem Toraman Turk, Associate Research Scientist at Yale University School of Public Health in the Department of Health Policy and Management. I am a research methodologist by training and specializing in mixed methods research. Today, I will be presenting the use of MAXQDA for mixed methods research projects through an example study. It will be a little bit more of overview of what you can learn about it in a generic sense. And I will refer to some of the sessions today and tomorrow so you can dive deeper into some of the sections or functions that we will be talking about. You are also more than welcome to check out my mixed methods chapter to learn more about this. In the Practice of Qualitative and Data Analysis book, second edition, which was edited by the two phenomenal researchers, and you can find in the resources, and you can find the book itself in at maxqda.com, and it's free. So let's go ahead and get started. So today we will focus on 4 domains, including organization and management of data, data analysis, integration, as well as visualization and reporting. So we will specifically focus on mixed methods functions, such as side-by-side display, segment matrix, and visual tools to demonstrate how you can use these tools in your mixed methods research projects. So it is, I think, always important to start with the description of what mixed methods research is, given that there are more than 40 definitions of mixed methods research in the literature, and depending on the definition you use, it may involve different strategies or ways of incorporating different forms of data in a study. And in the context of this presentation, I use Creswell and Plano-Clark's definition of mixed methods research, which emphasizes collecting, analyzing, and intentionally integrating qualitative and quantitative data in a study. So in line with this definition, if you employ mixed methods research in your study, you must have at least one or more quantitative and qualitative research questions, as well as mixed methods research question that communicates the integration or the interrelationship between the qualitative and quantitative component. So how can we use MAXQDA for our mixed methods research projects? I think it's a super important question, as the nature of mixed methods research projects is complex, and organization and management of data is so important in general to successfully manage any research projects. When it comes to mixed methods research, it is more important to create some form of mock data and experiment your organization in MAXQDA before you officially start working on your data analysis. Considering how you would like to organize your document system by types of data, as well as your code system by types of analysis, that informs how you will make connection among the different types of data you collect and analyze as part of your mixed methods research project. It is also important to consider your naming conventions so that you can make connection for your participants between the quantitative and qualitative forms of data when it comes to integrating the results from both components. So you can see some screenshots here. I'm gonna share more about them when we demonstrate the MAXQDA part, but you can see here, for example, code section. I had 3 different types of codes because I had different data analysis, interviews, social network analysis coming from online survey, as well as secondary data. So I organized my coding segment or code section accordingly. Same for documents. I had semi-structured interviews as well as online survey that was also used as part of social network analysis. And I collected my data in multiple ways that helped me to really see in what way I collected different types of or different data from different individuals just to keep track of information. In terms of convention, we can talk about it more detailed when we demonstrate the MAXQDA, but it is super important to create some form of convention in terms of naming your files for qualitative as well as quantitative aspect so that you can make linkages when you integrate your findings. So as mixed methods projects take more time due to their complexity and volume of multiple forms of data collection and analysis, it is important to track our progress as detailed as possible. during the process to ensure quality in mixed methods research projects. For this particular intent, you can use logbook entries on a regular basis. So we are not going to go deeper in that, as it's covered as part of the basics of MAXDAYS conference with different sessions. But you can also create backups and arrange those settings in your MAXQDA file and decide where you will save your files, which is super important. And it is best practice to have multiple backups of any data projects following ethical guidelines recommended by your institution. So if you use comparative analysis strategies, for example, MAXQDA can also help you examine patterns and explore some context-dependent information by having a chance to review previous backup files you may have, as MAXQDA automatically saves everything for you. And if you use the same file name, it's going to be constantly the same one. So you will not have a chance to go back within the same file, but having backups will give you that chance due to the iterative nature of mixed methods research project. When integrating your findings from both components, you may change some of the emerging codes or themes, or you may want to check those definitions or earlier description of codes or themes, as well as integrating findings in addressing your mixed methods integration research question. So lots of benefits for using MAXQDA. But when it comes to particularly using mixed methods research or using MAXQDA for your mixed methods research projects, MAXQDA offers statistics function to help you analyze your quantitative data by using descriptive statistics and frequencies. It also offers different options depending on the complexity of your quantitative data analysis. I know Tim Gutterman will have a session tomorrow that focuses on quantitative analysis in MAXQDA. So you are more than welcome to check that out. It might be more helpful to go through step-by-step what can be done with MAXQDA. So as you see here in the visual, you can create bar graphs, organize them in MAXQDA, and I will demonstrate that shortly, how to do, what to do, and it will be helpful to see even when your data is not clear or there's some issues with that, you can recognize those problems as you go. In terms of qualitative aspect of your project in a mixed method study, using various qualitative data analysis tool, you can go beyond coding your data and create memos about emerging ideas and reflections in the process. That might facilitate the creation of themes in your qualitative analysis. So you can use, for example, smart coding tool function, which is something we will check out shortly, and explore the overlapping codes or intersection of codes with the others when developing themes. And then it comes to integration and integrating your qualitative and quantitative components in your mixed methods project, you can activate documents by variables and create sets to explore patterns in the quantitative data, as well as experiences of those participants in qualitative data. So we will see how this function works, but you can see, for example, here in an example I have from my study, I created sets based on the social network analysis and survey findings. So I have different profiles of individuals, and I put all their information here in terms of the interviews. So when you activate these profiles, it will give you a chance to see those kind of comparison or how their experiences vary depending on which profile they fall into. You can also use segment matrix, which was previously labeled as interactive code matrix, for integrating qualitative open-ended responses from a survey, for example, and qualitative interviews. So you can see here, for example, like I have profile 2 individuals, and I have examples or references of the code books, which is something I'm going to explain in more detail in the context of this study. You can see where those references or the responses are coming from, and it gives you a chance to review all those experiences of individuals and coming from open-ended responses from a survey and qualitative interviews. Another function is, excuse me, side-by-side display of results that can help compare how each participant described their experiences qualitatively based on the patterns identified in the survey. So you can see here, we have qualitative study section and quantitative study section to activate this function and work from there. You can see the same participant, but one is coming from the interviews and one is coming from the quantitative survey. That way I can compare this participant responses and experiences from qualitative findings as well as quantitative findings to help integrate my results. The other function is, other integration function is qual themes by quant groups. If you have some sets of variables from your quantitative component and you would like to explore qualitatively how participants describe their experiences by that particular variable, you can review their responses and compare the findings. So here, for example, you can see there's a kind of code that comes from open-ended survey responses. And then you can see, like, I also have this also aligned with my qualitative responses. And these are organized by the degree of each individual who earned their doctoral degrees in different areas. And you can do kind of like comparison as a kind of like by quantitative groups that are described or were of interest as part of the research study that I conducted. Visualization and reporting is also super important in mixed methods research projects, as we use visual tools that are called joint displays, which can be in different forms, such as figures, tables, and other forms of visuals. One of the visual tools that might facilitate this process is Code Relations Browser or Code Matrix Browser. They both are super helpful, especially helping explore the relationship between codes or reviewing the codes by certain profiles that might be helpful to see, like, whatever you are paying attention to or what your research question is. That way you can visually see what it looks like for individuals experiencing something different than the others. And then by clicking on those squares, you can go in detail into their quotations or like what they express, and that will help you further explore all those details. Last but not least, MAXQDA offers MAXMaps function that allows you to be as creative as you would like. For example, as seen in this slide here, I integrated 3 theories in my dissertation study, which you can imagine it's super hard to explain how they intersect or interrelate in the context of a project. That's why I ended up creating a theoretical framework visually to depict how I made that connection among the 3 theories in the context of my study and further explain what each theory brought into the context of my work and how I communicated this specifically for the topic of interest that I was conducting as part of my study. So let's look at it together in the example study in detail and dive deeper in how to do what to do for these functions. So let me do a couple of arrangements here. If I can do, sorry, I just need to take this on the side as I have multiple screens over here. So let me do that, and then we can go from there. So as I'm doing this arrangement, I'm also happy to explain what this study is about, just to give a little bit more context. So as you can see here in the documents section, I have social network analysis survey that was kind of like collected in 3 waves. I used an online survey and collected data from 81 recent doctors, as I was interested in understanding how recent doctorates who use mixed methods research in their dissertations learned about mixed methods research during their doctoral education. I'm not going to go a lot of like granular detail of the project. You're more than welcome to check out the chapter and read and learn more about it, including the research questions or types of analysis in further detail. But you can see here, for example, in the document section, as I demonstrated just a little ago, I organized my social network analysis survey and the interviews here in 2 different major document groups that helped me tremendously. Because I use constant comparison technique as part of the design, mixed methods research design that I used in my study, I collected my data in 3 waves, meaning that I started with the online survey, and then based on the patterns and from the quantitative data as well as social network analysis findings, I ended up interviewing participants, selecting participants. Then I went back, collected second wave of data with the survey, and did the same thing again. It was constantly going back and forth between online survey, descriptive analysis, social network analysis, and interviews and qualitative data analysis. So that iterative process helped me tremendously in terms of the organization. As you can see here, we just talked about the naming conventions. When you look at this, I had different waves. So W1 refers to wave one, and then the year here you can see it refers to the participant, the year they graduated from their doctoral degree, and the participant number represented with P and number. And you can see I used the same convention like I did there, but with just one slight addition on the interviews, because based on the online survey results and the social network analysis findings, I found out that there were 6 profiles of learners of mixed methods research. And then these 6 profiles was important for me to understand these individuals' experiences. That's why I ended up adding kind of like with underscore, adding what profile these individuals are coming from. And you can see and followed by a number represents their profile number. You can also see I use different kind of like memo colors scheme here that refers to the quantitative results that are coming from the online survey. For example, for those participants who were labeled with green memo, that refers that they use more than the average number of sources to learn about mixed methods research, whereas orange one was kind of reflecting the average number of resources to learn about mixed methods. The red one was below the average. So I also, as you can see, as I hover over each of these memo for each participant, I also put a bulleted list of description or kind of major results that were super important for me to further explore their experiences when I look at qualitatively what these individuals experience as part of this process of learning about mixed methods research. So you can see I put some results from eigenvector centrality that comes from social network data. I also provided some context about their background, like what field they were coming from, what type of institution they graduated from, and the number of resources or sources they identified as part of the survey. So that helped me at least to really not go back and like feel that I have to constantly go back to my Excel spreadsheet or other document where I have to check all that relevant information to learn more about these individuals' experiences quantitatively, so I could make that link easily. So as we were going through the organization and structure, I think we captured all those details, but if you have anything else, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to move forward, just given the time we have left. So for the stats, especially for the quantitative piece, we mentioned that there will be a session tomorrow. You can check it out more. But how to do and what to do when using MAXQDA, you can, under the stats function, when you activate your statistical documents, which is coming from my survey data, if you start with activated documents, and it gives you this visual of as if it's a kind of like SPSS file or data file. Then you can do descriptive statistics and click on that, either using frequencies or descriptive statistics can be a function too. When you do frequencies, for example, let's say I am interested in seeing the number of sources that were ranked as the first most important for the recent doctorates. If I click on it, you can see there's a table that appears here. You can see some of the data. I intentionally use this version just to give you a little bit like how to play with your data or fix some of those issues with your data as well. You can see I have books and advisor, whereas I have these as a separate category. So you can either delete this raw and just organize this, and then you transition to here, this section. By hitting this chart view option, you can use this bar chart in different way. If you don't like the way how it looks, for example, you can go back to your table. You can hit the frequency and sort this from the most frequent one to the least, and then you can see that it just appears like this. And what you want to do is, as you can see here, there's a function, there's a label that I use for this coming from the survey. By double clicking this title, you can just change this and type, for example, first most beneficial resource for learning about mixed methods research or something like this. So that way you can just label it accordingly and then copy and paste to your document and go from there. You can also design differently. You can use different colors and organize your chart and how you want it to look in your file. And you can directly copy and paste it or save it and export it with using this export function, which is upper arrow right around the right upper corner. So you can use this one as well. In terms of qualitative piece, if we want to look at that, just to make sure we capture those details as well, under the codes, there's a function that we just mentioned, smart coding tool. When you click on that smart coding tool, for example, depending on what you want to look at, this time we are interested in, for example, our semi-structured interviews. And you can, for example, see here, I have all these sets of codes and different ones. And let's say I am interested in looking at different codes and what I want to do with one of the interview codes. If I can scroll enough down, and oops, it's up at the top, sorry. There we go. And you can see, for example, promoting factors or different ones. There you can see all these overlapping codes. When you work on developing themes, that way you can really see what codes are overlapping or interrelated, linked within the context of your study. And that way you can explore patterns and go from there. And moving on to integration, especially, oh, thank you. I just learned about that. I can take 5 or more minutes to, thank you. I truly appreciate that, MAXQDA team. Much appreciated. I just want to make sure I'm not rushing through and everyone can also benefit from this to some extent in a way that will be meaningful for us all. So mixed methods menu, that's something we talked about, activating documents by variable values. Especially variables or the values that we are interested in using and creating sets. So coming back to here, as you recall, I had different profiles of individuals that are part of this as sets. So let's say I am interested in activating this, and I am interested in activating, for example, not that one. I want to do with profile 1. Let's go profile. I select the profile, whatever the category or activated variable that I want to go with. And then let's say I am interested in profile 2 here. So if I want to activate this group of people, so you can just see here, I just want to activate profile 2 individuals. You can click activate, and then you can see immediately it just activates it for you rather than you clicking around and doing all of this. So the other function that we talked about is segment matrix, which is really helpful and important too. Referring back to profile 2 individuals, this time you can see what these individuals' experiences are qualitatively. So if we want to look at profile 2 individuals, let's say, we click OK, and here we go. Then, for example, if I am interested in these individuals, for example, which one I can say, like getting out of the program, like how they benefited from it, or like different codes that might be meaningful, or the type of focus that they received for about the quantitative approaches versus qualitative. By clicking through this, you can see the responses collectively coming from profile 2. That way you can explore and interpret your findings and go from there. So I hope that helps as well, especially if you are interested in kind of like having different groups of people or profiles of individuals, or having some form of categorization of those individuals' experiences, exploring those by some grouping or variable or factor that might be of interest in the context of your project. And the other function we talked about in terms of integration was a side-by-side display. So we talked about the coded segments, side-by-side display of results. If you click on it, so let me deactivate all of this, that way we can just make it a little bit more clear. As you can see, there are themes here. So I am gonna go ahead and pick one of those themes that was kind of like important as part of our kind of like of interest for the topic. And then let's see, look, you can see here, we mentioned we have qualitative study and quantitative study on the side. If we are interested in, for example, one particular participant's qualitative and quantitative experience from the semi-structured interview, if I open up that section, if I go with participant 16, I drag and drop that participant 16 qualitative data over here, and then I find that individual in the quantitative data and drag and drop it in the quantitative study section too. And then, for example, if I hit OK, I can see this participant's kind of like experience coming from semi-structured interviews versus coming from quantitative findings, what it meant for this participant to experience or use books as part of learning about mixed methods research during their doctoral education. So it's kind of like giving you a chance to do comparison of qualitative and quantitative data by really doing this at the individual level as well. The other function we talked about is qualitative themes by quantitative groups. That's kind of like part of the coded segment as well. So let's say I am interested in this qualitative themes by quantitative groups, and I have an important data that is coming from, let me just find that. So there's a kind of theme that I use as and label this as their description of why mixed methods was important, learning about it, and what was playing important role in their learning about mixed methods research. And then as we talked about it, you can select group. So here, for example, I can go with degree, and I can choose, for example, PhD, people EDD or versus DA, which is Doctorate of Arts. You can see based on people's degree, type of degree, or what type of degree they earned, how the experiences varied or differed can be of interest, and then we can do this. When we do that, so like if you want to do kind of like activate files, you can activate those and then go from there and do the comparison. As you can see here, I can have all these individuals' experiences coming from survey or interview based on the type of degree they earned, and I can do this type of comparison as well. So this can be applicable in any context, and you may come up with different ones and different tools, or depending on the topic of interest, you may organize different variables that might play important role in exploring qualitative themes by quantitative groups that you may want to further look at. So just to be mindful of our time and be respectful of everyone's time, and also be able to capture all the questions you have in the Q&A section, I would like to also finally touch on the visual tools piece. So we talked about the Code Matrix browser and Code Relations browser. So Code Relations browser is something that, for example, you can click on raw, and you can, for example, select individuals, for example, in specific codes coming from qualitative data. And then you can, for example, go with columns, selecting particular of those that might be more interest in you, for example, hindering factors or disciplinary roles. Or if you want to look at, for example, specifically the type of sources that you wanted to further explore and compare with those, when you hit OK, and if you have, for example, like kind of interviews activated, if you want to just go with the activated documents, you can do kind of comparison and see where they overlap or differ. And then you can see how they, like by clicking off all of those, you can see like some of these do not have any like overlapping at all. That might help you to really explore in what context and how they talk about their experiences versus the sources they use to learn about these factors that played an important role in their learning about mixed methods research, as it was applicable in my study. And then Matrix browser is the other one, For example, if we are interested in document sets, so we have kind of like here, we have sets. We talked about different sets we have 6 sets of group. If I want to do this comparison by sets, by profiles, if I hit OK, now you can see all the interview codes here by profiles. And by clicking on those, you can really see like which individual or which profile and what code that in what context they refer to other details. So this gives you a little bit more context in terms of overlapping of these factors and how it might play important role, or you may want to further go and explore any of those codes as you are going to work on the visualization and reporting. And last but not least, we talked about MAXMaps. As I mentioned, I use 3 theories. I use social network theory, diffusion of innovations theory, and socio-ecological framework within the context of my dissertation. It was super hard to communicate those 3 theories in one, in a narrative form. That's why I ended up creating a figure. As you can see here, like you can do start, you can create a new map, and then create a kind of like use different visuals functions here. And that will give you a chance to create a visual like this. I know there are some sessions that dig further into MAXMaps and other details today and tomorrow, so you're more than welcome to check them out. But this may give you a chance to really see that you can have everything in one place. As you use MAXQDA, you can have everything, and you can also create kind of like different joint displays. So I can show one example that I had, but for some reason it doesn't appear here. I don't know why. Technology apparently is not in my favor today. But there we go. This is the joint display I also created. And as part of my work, this was a kind of social network map, but I identified there was a cluster of people learning from different courses. So you can see here categorization of courses. So what I did was, using the social network analysis tool, I copied and pasted the social network map here, and then creating kind of like circles, grouping, I created this visual within MAXQDA, which was super helpful and useful to see how these courses help individuals in different ways. So that's pretty much it, actually. And let me just look at the Q&A section and address your questions. Is it possible to compare 2 qualitative interviews? I did 2 interviews at 2 different times is one of the questions come to our way. So it is possible, actually. You can do comparison. What you can do is there are different functions like analysis. You can do like summary tables, summary explore, or compare case groups. So when you click on under the analysis, compare cases groups, you can do qualitative coded segment. You can create cases here. If, for example, you want to do profile cases, or you want to do kind of like profile two individuals and want to compare them, then you can drag and drop your codes here by clicking OK. You can also do this as well. So I'm going to just drop a couple of those, as I'm not sure if all of them are possible to do, but let me group another one. So that way we are going to create, for example, compare. You can do 2 individuals too, but you can also do 2 groups of interviews as well. So profile 2 and 3 for here, for example. When you hit this, you can see by clicking on all of these, you can see profile 2 versus 3, what they were saying. So you can see all of this and scroll down and compare the qualitative responses of these individuals from there. So I hope that helps and addresses your question. And the other question is, how is quant data mapped to associate qual codes? I guess I need a little bit more clarification on this question. So in terms of mapping the quantitative data to associate qualitative codes, I will say there needs to be some form of code that you want to use both for quantitative and qualitative, or some indication of it. So I can give an example, for example, from my list, if I scroll down. So if I hover over here, you can see I had a code that was explicitly asking individuals about description of why the type of sources recent doctors identified were most beneficial to their learning about mixed methods research. So I use this both for qualitative and quantitative aspect of my work. That way you can see how it overlapped and explained by individuals and their experiences. This is one way of doing this, but you can also, if, for example, it's a little more quantitatively driven, or you want to look at variables, have those variables interplay in terms of people's experiences, then you can use variable, as we demonstrated in mixed methods. You can activate document based on variable values, and then see kind of like how they differ, or doing kind of comparison might be a great way to do it as well. Hopefully that helps. The next question we have is MAXMaps to integrate different theories in a project, please. Yes, happy to, Maria. I think one thing is, like, it's super important to use MAXMaps and play around it. Sometimes, like, theories, I'm not sure how you feel about like reading a theory and then trying to apply it in the context of your project, but I sometimes find it super overwhelming, because a theory can be complex and has multifaceted or multi-layers, or multiple terms that some of them might not be applicable in the context of your work. That way, it is important for us to communicate what aspects of that theory is applicable in our study. That's why I find it super helpful to create a visual that communicates how we use that theory or the elements of that theory in the context of our work. So this is something I personally came up with and used this because, for example, these macro, meso, and micro levels are coming from socioecological framework. And then kind of like making these arrows were more about me making that connection across levels from social network theory, and like explaining these recent doctorate network at the center of the work. So it's more about like the context-dependent piece, what you're trying to understand, how those theories and concepts are applicable to your work. And then you explain it like in a narrative form for yourself. Visualizing this along the way helps tremendously to really communicate that narrative more strategically, I think. So that's one way. I'm sure there are sessions for this, but hopefully it just helps, or it at least inspires you to use MAXMap tool for your future work. And there was another kind of anonymous attendee question. Do you code survey data in a similar way to qual transcripts? So that's a perfect question. Let's take a quick look at how I code it. So if you can take a look at it. So I did both deductive and inductive coding in my survey. So you can see, for example, these are kind of sources of learning about mixed methods research. These kind of like survey codes were listed under specific category or kind of code groups in my coding system. So you can see sources of learning about mixed methods research. They were all coming from close-ended questions. And then, but I had open-ended other option where people put their own responses as well. So based on what they put in, I also had that listed here. Then I asked people about the ranking of these beneficial sources of learning about mixed methods research. So you can see I have ranking system, which didn't have anything beyond it, because I did use this, as I just demonstrated, frequency and just ranking with a visual way of communicating which one was more or most beneficial compared to other one. And I asked people to rank top 5. And then coming back to kind of identifying information for sources, beyond identifying sources, I asked them like how they were helpful or useful for them, or through what way they learned about this. For example, when we ask about books, people said they use writing a dissertation book or source. So I did kind of like a little bit inductive coding here, meaning that I created from the data by reading the responses from the participants and creating these subcodes here. And then you can see, for example, they had kind of like different ones labeled. And coming to courses, for example, you can see we just demonstrated like what courses they learned about mixed methods research. That was the kind of social map of clusters and grouping. So you can see here people explain like through what courses they learned about it. These were all open or inductively coded codes that were created from the data. So there are different ways to do this. I think it's all dependent on, just to summarize your question and answer it a little bit briefly, it depends on your research questions and what you want to accomplish with your project. There is no one way of doing this, as we mostly say in mixed methods research. Depending on your research project, you can do either way, like purely quantitative using MAXQDA stats function, or doing a little bit for both, doing both deductively and inductively in the process. So I hope that addresses your question as well. And the last question we had, could you share a bit more about how did you create this SNA graph? Perfect. I appreciate this question. This is not within the scope of MAXQDA because I use different social network analysis tools to really use this. I use UCINet and others. So, but what I did was, when I created, for example, a social network map based on the results from UCINet, I just copied and pasted here using MAXMaps in the example that I just showed here, and then just organized it here to work on some demonstration or bringing in qualitative pieces of coming from the survey and the others. So I hope that answers your question. I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know we passed our time so much, but if you have anything else, please let me know. I am not sure if I missed any other questions, but please let me know if I have anything else. And I hope you all enjoyed this session and benefited from it in some way. And MAXQDA is such a great tool that helps tremendously, and you can be as creative as you want. I hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions or MAXDAY conference. And I truly appreciate everyone staying connected while I was gone for a couple of minutes as we lost power. Thanks so much. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will do my best to review chat in case you may have anything else to say. But oh, there was a question in the chat, just to make sure I capture that too. Interviewed according to their gender. So comparing answers according to gender and all of that is possible, as we talked about categories. So hopefully that helps. And if you have anything else, I'm sure MAXQDA team will follow up and we can address this offline. Hope you all have a great day. And thanks so much, Xander, for navigating through this and helping me. Truly appreciate it.